hit 7, so whenever you're ready.
A quorum, so why don't we just get going?
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and, well, I'll call the roll unless do you first want to
Call us
share in, what's that?
Should I call us to order and do all that?
Yes.
All right, so we're ready to go. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, August 19th electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Transportation Commission. This meeting is in accordance with the executive orders from the governor to effect social distancing and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient. There are technical difficulties. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 1-888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID number 934-4956-3988. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at a2gov.org. So this meeting was called to order at 7:01 p.m. and I will now ask Kayla to call the roll.
All right, thank you, Molly. We have received regrets from Commissioner Margolis, Dolan, and Crawford, who are not able to join us this evening. I will now call the roll. Please say here when your name is called. Commissioner Boland.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Felt.
Here.
Councilmember Griswold.
Here.
Commissioner Hadumaki.
Here.
Commissioner Hull.
Here.
Commissioner Kleinman.
Here.
Commissioner Lernahan.
Here.
Commissioner Parsons.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Summers.
Here.
Commissioner Woods. Sergeant Bill Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Hess.
Here.
Commissioner Stupka. We do have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Kayla. So are there any modifications to the agenda? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Hadumaki, and seconded, I saw, yep, Lernahan. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move into public comment. This is an opportunity. Oh, no.
Just, you've motioned and you have a motion and second, and let's do a vote.
Yep, sorry about that. I forgot about all the roll calls. Okay.
And we can just do all in favor, all opposed. We don't have to do an individual.
Great, so all in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so agenda is approved. So now we're moving in. Oh, Kayla.
Just one other, I just have noticed that Commissioner Woods joined us. Thank you, Commissioner Woods. I'll update the attendance to reflect your participation. Thank you.
Ready? Okay, so now we're going to move into public comment. This is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 1-888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID number 934-4956-3988. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and the video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone on the line right now? There is.
We do. We have phone number 814 has raised their hand. I'm going to allow you to talk, you'll need to unmute yourself and go ahead with your public comment. And
How do
number,
they mute themselves?
it is *9 to unmute yourself. And it looks like they're still muted, so if you can try *9, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Clark Chernetsky. Hi. I have two things to talk about, both positive ones. One has to do with the Amtrak station as part of the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disability Act. The Amtrak has been doing work in the station. They're rebuilding the ticket counter to make it easier access, plus a little greater separation between the two agents. They're redoing the restrooms to meet ADA compliance, plus the interiors have been redone, so it looks much better. Also, 5 years ago, the high-level platform was put in. It was experimental. It was supposed to run for 2 years. Well, it's been 5 years now, and they just did an extensive rehab control system and the drive system for that, so that's set to go for another several years. And also with the pedestrian tunnel, which isn't really connected with the Amtrak station per se, but is in the area, is almost complete. It is due to be completed by the end of September, and it looks like that will happen. The major construction work, concrete work, and moving soil around and so forth is pretty well completed. Concrete work should be done within a week. And today they put down the base for the path on the riverside of that tunnel. And I suppose that'll be blacktopped this week or early next week. So that went beautifully on schedule. I wish all projects would go that way. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your comments are always very welcome. Kayla, do we have anyone else?
We do not. No other callers at this time.
Okay, so what we've been doing in the past is because calling in can be tricky, if a member of the public calls in later, we can sort of reopen public comment to give them a chance to speak. But for now, we're going to move on. So next we have, we're going to view a presentation from AAATA Deputy CEO of Operations, Brian Smith, regarding the RIDE and AAATA service restoration plans. So Kayla, I think you're going to get us set to watch that.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead.
Oh, Brian, your audio cut out. You're back on mute.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
No problem.
So I'm going to go ahead and play the presentation that we've been sharing with the public, and then we'll be available afterwards as the chair sees fit.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Smith, Deputy CEO of Operations at the RIDE. Thank you all for joining us for this presentation of our temporary service changes that will take effect August 30th. First and most important, we hope you and yours are safe and supported during these uncertain times. The RIDE has been adjusting to the constantly changing realities of COVID-19 to ensure continuity and safety of our essential services. We are taking a cautious and measured approach to phase services back in, which prioritizes your safety and that of our drivers and staff. Beginning on August 30th, the RIDE will introduce a restructured network of interim routes that focuses on essential destinations and increased frequency on busy corridors. These temporary changes are being made to allow for social distancing and to remain financially sustainable during the pandemic. While we are not able to restore all services this August, we hope to do so once the course of the pandemic and its financial impacts become clearer. Later this year, we will reach out for public feedback on future changes. In this presentation, we will walk through the temporary route changes. After our presentation, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions or to provide comments, time permitting. To comment during the Zoom meeting, click the raise hand icon in the bottom middle part of your screen, or to raise your hand by phone, press *9. During the comment period, we will read off your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number when your line has been unmuted. We are recording these town halls so that we don't miss any questions. In addition to commenting at the end of a virtual meeting, you can provide comments on the temporary service plan using our online form at theride.org/maps-schedules/service-changes by calling 734-794-1882, sending an email to planning@theride.org, or by mailing a letter to the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, attention, temporary service, August 2020, 2700 South Industrial Highway, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48104. First, we will present routes that operate beginning August 30th. Unless otherwise noted, routes will operate weekdays from 6 a.m. to 9:15 p.m., running every 30 minutes, and on weekends, 7 a.m. to 8:15 p.m., running every 30 minutes. We will start with routes that travel between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. Route 3 will use a revised route traveling on Huron Street instead of Ann and Catherine in Ann Arbor, and will travel Huron River to Lowell instead of LaForge, Clark, and River Street in Ypsilanti. We have added weekend service Saturday and Sunday every half an hour. Route 4 will use a revised Route 4A serving U of M hospitals on Observatory. Route 5 will use a revised 5A routing and serve Carpenter Road to Meyer. We've added 30-minute service Saturdays and Sundays. Route 6 will use the 6A routing, and the Briarwood bus stop will be moved to Briarwood Circle and Plaza Drive. Service will also be increased to every 15 minutes during peak hours. We've added 30-minute service on the weekends. Now we'll present routes that operate in Ann Arbor. Route 22 will use a revised route between the Blake Transit Center and Food Gatherers. Buses headed to the Blake Transit Center will use Maiden Lane to Huron Street. We've added 30-minute service on the weekends. Route 23 will follow the 23A routing to the Plymouth Road Park and Ride lot and will be extended to serve Traver and Tubingen. Route 25 will operate a revised route between the Blake Transit Center and Meyer on Ann Arbor-Saline Road. It will also serve Main Street between Ann Arbor-Saline Road and Oak Brook. We've added 30-minute service on the weekends. Route 28 will follow the 28B routing and will also serve Liberty east of West Stadium. We have added 30-minute service on the weekends. Route 30's name has been changed to the Jackson-Dexter route. It will use a revised route that ends at Wagner Road and will serve Huron, Dexter, Wagner, and Jackson roads. We've added 30-minute service on the weekends. Route 31 will be served by Route 30 on the north side of Dexter. Areas to the west of Wagner Road will be served by FlexRide. Route 32's name has been changed to the Miller route. We have revised routing to serve U of M Central Campus on weekdays and the BTC on weekends. Skyline High School will be served on select weekday trips. We've added 30-minute service on the weekends. Route 62 will use morning and afternoon routing with no service to Briarwood. It will operate during weekday peak hours only. Route 65's name has been changed to the Green Fuller route. This bus will use a revised route from the Blake Transit Center to Green Road Park and Ride and serve Fuller Road, U of M North Campus, and the VA Hospital. We've added 30-minute service on the weekends. Now for routes that operate in Ypsilanti. Route 41 will be based on the Eastern Michigan University's class schedules and will operate between the College of Business and Eastern Michigan University's main campus. Route 42's name has been changed to the MacArthur Michigan Avenue route. This bus will use a revised route that serves Michigan Avenue, Ford Road, MacArthur Boulevard, Clark Road, and Holmes Road. We've added 30-minute service on the weekends. Route 44 includes additional service on the weekends to operate every 30 minutes. Route 45 will use a revised route between Ypsilanti Transit Center and Harry and Grove Streets. Service east of Harry will be served by FlexRide East. Route 46's name has been changed to Paint Creek Route and will operate a revised route between the Ypsilanti Transit Center and the Ypsilanti District Library on Whitaker Road. Arbor Preparatory High School will be served on select weekday trips, and service south of the library will be served by FlexRide East. Route 47 includes additional service on the weekends to operate every 30 minutes. FlexRide will be expanded to cover late night and holiday service, replacing night ride and holiday ride. Trips can begin and end anywhere within the service area as outlined below. Trips are available 7 days a week from 7:15 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. weekdays and 8:15 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. on weekends. The FlexRide service area will be expanded, and the following routes or route segments will be served by FlexRide during this phase of the reopening. For Route 26, FlexRide will serve Scioto Township west of 94, including Scioto Ridge between Sudbury and the intersection of Scioto Church and Oak Valley. It can also be used to connect with Route 28. For Route 27 in Ann Arbor, options include using Route 25 or 28, and in Pittsfield Township, FlexRide can be used to connect to Route 25 at Meyer. For Route 29 in Ann Arbor, options include using Route 28 east of West Stadium. In Scioto Township, FlexRide can be used to connect with Route 28 or Route 30 west of West Stadium. FlexRide can be used in place of Route 30 west of Wagner Road. FlexRide can be used in place of Route 33 north of M14 with a connection to Route 32 at the Miller Road Park and Ride. FlexRide replaces Route 45 east of Harry, and FlexRide replaces Route 46 south of Whitaker Road Library. The following routes will be suspended in Ann Arbor, and we suggest using an alternative route. For Route 21, use Route 22. For Route 24, use routes 4, 5, 6, or 25. For Route 26, use FlexRide. For Route 27, use Route 25, Route 28, or FlexRide. For Route 29, use Route 28 or FlexRide. For Route 31, use the revised Route 30 Jackson-Dexter. For Route 33, use Route 32 or FlexRide. For Route 60, use routes 23 or 32. For Route 63, use Route 22. For Route 64, use routes 4 or 5. For Route 66, use routes 3, 4, 5, or 65. The following routes will be suspended in Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township, and we recommend alternatives. For Route 43, use Route 42. For Route 68, use routes 42, 44, or 45. The express routes will be suspended, and we recommend using the Van Ride Van Pool service, the Ypsilanti Express, the Canton Express, and the Chelsea Express. You can reach Van Ride Van Pool services at myvanride@theride.org. We are now opening up to comments. As a reminder, to comment, click the raise hand icon in the bottom middle part of your screen, or to raise your hand by phone, press *9. During the comment period, we will read off your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number when your line has been unmuted. As a conversation starter, one of the most common questions we've received is how we arrived at these decisions. There were 5 guiding principles that the planning staff used to plan these service changes. The first was that we had 60% of our previous service hours to allocate. The second was that we wanted to focus on high ridership routes. The third was high frequency to allow for social distancing. The fourth was to simplify routing to ease the ability to add overflow buses. For example, a full bus is now no more than 20 people, which is a third of what a full bus was pre-pandemic, meaning that it takes 3 buses to do what 1 bus did prior. We are also simplifying routes by eliminating the route variations and reducing the number of interlined routes to help add service as ridership increases. And the 5th principle was using FlexRide or demand response when the fixed route was not practical. It's paramount to understand that this is a temporary plan in response to the pandemic. No routes have been eliminated, only suspended. The next stage of the recovery plan will include a robust public input process to determine how best to allocate our resources. And we are very hopeful that the next steps will occur in a world with a vaccine for COVID-19. You are encouraged to provide comments by using the form at theride.org/maps-schedules/service-changes, by calling 734-794-1882, by sending an email to planning@theride.org, or mailing a letter to the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, attention, temporary service, August 2020, 2700 South Industrial Highway, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48104. Remember, you can always visit theride.org or call 734-996-0400 for detailed and up-to-date route information. We know these changes will affect your daily transportation needs, and we look forward to hearing your feedback and working with you to get through these next few months as safely and as effectively as possible. Thank you. With your help, we can continue to provide on-time, essential transportation to our community.
And that's the presentation.
Thank you, Brian. So I think we're now open to, sorry, go ahead, Molly.
Oh, great. No, I think I cut out for a second there, but so yeah, we're now open for commissioner comments and questions. And I'm going to ask you to physically raise your hand with your video on, and I will call on people and set a queue going. I muted myself before calling on you. Commissioner Lernahan, sorry.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. I think that it's very useful for people who are using the ride. I just wanted to know, in this interim stage, how flexible this plan is to public comment. So if you get a lot of feedback from the public, will there be interim changes, or is this the plan going forward until the end of the year, for instance, and then you'll decide to implement changes?
So it is flexible. It has some limitations in that the routing that you see and in general the frequency are pretty much what we have available. Between now and November, which is when our next bid is, and when the next major change, assuming U of M comes back and stays through Thanksgiving, we do have plans to have another bid for our operators in November. But between now and then, part of what we've done is reserve at least some of our capacity, although not very much, I'll be honest, to be responsive to additional demands. One of the things that we don't know, for example, is that even pre-COVID, we had 15-minute service or better. In fact, we had 5-minute service on the 4, and we still had full buses. So we're now going to 15-minute service on the 4. If we get full bus after full bus in the mornings with 20 people, our hope is to take some of that reserve and be able to be responsive and add to that. As far as adding coverage areas, I would say the same is true as we see what demand is as we go into this. If we can add coverage, we certainly will. It's difficult with the software that we have to get it into the real-time system so that people can see where the bus is coming on their phone. But depending on what the demand is, we'll do our best to react. The major unknown for us right now that still sits out there unknown is state funding. We get about a quarter of our operating funding from the state, and we don't know if that's going to remain the same, if it's going to be cut at all, if it's going to be eliminated. And so part of this financial stability in this plan is to be able to continue to run this service, even if we find out in September or October that the state funding, worst case scenario obviously would be that it's completely gone. Then we would still be able to operate this level of service.
Right, thank you.
Commissioner Hall? Sorry, Tim, you're still muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just wondering if, since this plan was first put out there a few weeks ago and there's been feedback, has there been any changes? I mean, this looks the same as what I saw a few weeks ago, and I'm wondering if there's been any changes to it, or if there may be, or will it be as it originally was presented?
So at the moment, we don't have any changes concrete planned. We are looking at all of the feedback that we're getting and seeing what else we can do. One of the things that for me is very backwards about this process is that in my career in public transit, I'm used to proposing a plan after public feedback and then getting feedback on that plan and then redoing it, making changes and then putting it back out for public comment and then, making a final plan. And because of the pandemic and the shortened timeframes we've had to react to this, we aren't putting it out for public comment the way we normally would, which is one of the reasons that we're stressing that nothing has been eliminated, that all of the routes that are suspended on a temporary basis, and that we will be coming back for solid public input and really what all of me and my colleagues think of as the normal public input process. So that we'll be as flexible as we can and seeing what we can change. But at the moment, I don't have any concrete changes to this plan to identify since it's been unveiled a couple weeks back.
Other questions or comments? I have a couple of questions. So first, I was wondering, I have the luck and privilege of living on one of the bus lines that is going to keep running. I'm wondering what is the experience going to look like for someone who is being told to rely on the Flex Ride? Like what do those vehicles look like? How many of them are there? What kind of wait times are we talking about for someone who, for example, wants to be getting to and from the southeast side of Ypsilanti, as one example, where the bus route has gone away and now it's Flex Ride?
So Flex Ride, each of the areas where our contractor is planning on a certain number of vehicles, but is also able to alter that based on demand. From a standpoint of what it looks like to a user, if somebody has used Lyft or Uber, the app that you can use is very similar. In fact, they even have the black and white color scheme from Uber. Mode does. If they make a phone call, the difference between this and, for example, if they were using same day A ride previously, or night ride or holiday ride, is that they'll be able to know whether or not they can get that ride right when they call, as opposed to just leaving a message. So they'll be able to coordinate that kind of on the go. The transfers are free, which is new. It's not something that we had done prior with Flex Ride. So on the south side of Ypsilanti, you're able to get either to a transfer point, like at Kroger if you wanted to, or alternately, and this is only true on the Flex Ride East, we can bring you all the way into the YTC, to the Ypsilanti Transit Center, and you can transfer to the bus that you would normally get to and from there and get to your final destination. So the vehicles are Golden Limousine is the contractor. Their color scheme is a black limo color vehicle. They've got a variety of types of vehicles. Many of them are, or if not most of them, are lift equipped. Some are like an airport shuttle style. Some are the smaller Caravan, Dodge Caravan style. So it will depend on the service demand, and then how many people will ride on those is also dependent on the type of vehicle. If it's the larger airport shuttle, you can fit more people on and still have social distancing. If it's more of a passenger car type of vehicle, then it will be a single household per vehicle.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Are there any additional protocols being put in place in terms of safety, like virus safety for both the drivers and the passengers in the Flex Ride?
On the Flex Ride, it is typically primarily cashless. The drivers do have to wear masks. If they do pay with cash, if anybody pays with cash, the drivers will be gloved to accept that, so that they're not exposed with a passenger. They have a cleaning protocol at Golden Limousine that is similar to ours, in that they'll clean their vehicles every evening, just like we do. And we'll encourage, particularly like with the app, for people to use cashless as much as possible. But it is still an option because not everybody is cashless or has access to that. So.
Thank you. This is really helpful. And actually, I have a related question, which is about contactless payment for the buses. Is that, I know it's something that's been talked about for a long time. I'm wondering if that's being moved up in any way to deal with the pandemic.
As a matter of fact, it has. We had been talking about it internally for quite some time, but with the pandemic and the CARES Act funding, we've taken the step, and our board has voted to join a consortium of transits that started originally in Ohio called NeoRide. And we're actually the second state to join, because Tank in Northern Kentucky Transit also joined, but we're the first in Michigan. And when you join NeoRide, what you get access to is a company called Masabi, and they have a contactless fare payment that's smartphone based. And we did a project kickoff for that last week, and are hoping to go live with it, I believe, either the end of September or early October, in order to have cashless payments sooner rather than later.
Great. And so that'll be phone based, and it'll be in all the buses?
It will be phone based, and because it's phone based, we actually don't have to put any hardware on the buses, because we already do what's called visual validation. Somebody who has an ADA card or a fair deal card just holds it up to show the driver. The phone is the same thing. You hold it up, and you can buy a monthly pass, a daily pass, a single ride ticket, all of that, all available to purchase on the phone.
That's great to hear. I'm really excited to hear how that goes. Maybe we can plan to have you back in a few months to tell us about that, because I know it's been high on a lot of people's lists for a long time.
I'd be more than happy to. I have checked with friends of mine back in Ohio, where I came from, and implementation is as easy as the salesman promises. So it ought to be hopefully a quick win for us in this situation.
That's great to hear. Awesome. So are there any other questions or comments? All right, good. So thank you so much. I think we're going to move on to the next item. So now we're going to invite Commissioner Brett Hadamaki to provide an update on his involvement in the CIP prioritization process.
Yes. Okay. So quick update. We have, and Raymond, by the way, you've attended these meetings, so feel free to jump in if I get anything wrong or miss anything. We've held 2 out of the 3 planned meetings for the capital improvement project planning update. The first meeting last week, we were introduced to the Elevance software team, that the city is contracted with. And they kind of outlined the 5 steps that are part of the process for CIP, those being strategize your objectives, compare your priorities and determine the weighting between your priorities. Third, try to quantify the proposed projects using metrics, KPI. And then 4th, score the projects, and then 5, select the projects. So the main goal of this process is strategic alignment with events. So the first thing that we did was to define the strategic priorities for active transportation. This is only, these meetings are only for the active transportation group. And in the first meeting, we defined our strategic priorities, 6 of them, to be equity, physical safety, compliance, access and mobility, funding and engineering feasibility, and coordination with other projects or agencies. It's the cat. And then underneath those priorities, the 6 priorities, there's also the option to have objectives. For example, under the compliance priority, we've defined some strategic objectives to be, how does it meet regulatory or policy objectives, ADA, those kinds of regulatory objectives, or is it identified as a project or a program in the city's transportation plan, which is going through an update now. For the access and mobility priority, some objectives are identified are the user experience and carbon neutrality. And we put a lot of thought into how to fit the 820 plan into the overall priority set. So that was the first meeting to define those 6 priorities and some objectives, how the projects will be scored. The second meeting earlier this week was to start quantifying projects within that framework. So Elevance has a low, medium, high scoring for each project. Right now, there's kind of a 0 to 10 numerical scale applied to a bunch of different metrics. We're moving away from that to a low, medium, high. So we started with the physical safety priority to try to define what does a low or medium or high score look like. So for that case, let me get to safety. A low desirability, for example, would be safety improvements that are not identified through tier 1 or tier 2 in the transportation plan, the draft transportation plan. So it doesn't necessarily identify a safety improvement. A medium would be a tier 2 safety improvement. High would be a tier 1 safety improvement. And so we also went through just a couple of the priorities in the second meeting to try to start setting the low, medium, high. And also with the Elevance software, there is a scoring applied to low, medium, and high. And so for each priority, we can define, is low 33, medium 67, and high 100, or does it follow an S curve or kind of a concave up or concave down curve? And so that's part of the process. And for physical safety, we selected, and I think we're going to do this probably for all the priorities, is just a linear curve where low would be 33, medium 67, and high 100 points. So those are the first 2 meetings. The third meeting, I think we're going to, some people have homework to go through the other priorities. And when we meet next Monday, I think we're going to finish setting those quantification, low, medium, high scores for the 6 priorities. And one thing I want to offer, this group is if you have any input or thoughts on those 6 priorities or objectives that fall underneath those priorities, or if you have feelings about how to quantify the low, medium, and high grading within those for projects, please let me know, including myself and Kayla, and I will bring that input to Monday afternoon's meeting, and that will be our 3rd of 3 meetings. Not to say that input won't be accepted after that, but that's our last planned meeting. Raymond, do you have anything else that I missed, or is anything not clear? Any questions at all?
No, Commissioner Hadamaki, you did a fantastic job kind of giving a very good overview of the process. This is new to all of us because there's a new program and a new firm that's helping us with it. So it is kind of starting from scratch. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to think through things a little bit differently. And I think Commissioner Hadamaki did a great job of synopsizing where we're at in the process and what direction we're headed.
Great. So are there any questions or comments? Okay. So then I'm going to move us along to the next agenda item, which is also related to the CIP recommendations. So, and again, this is Brett, we're back to you, Commissioner Hadamaki. So he's going to lead us through some proposed CIP recommendations that are coming. These would be coming from the Transportation Commission to the Planning Commission, and these are in your packet for tonight. And this is just following up on the presentation that we had last month. So Commissioner Hadamaki, back to you.
Okay, all right, there we go. Yeah, I did not expect or intend to be the only person.
Sorry.
I just feel like I threw in a wish list of stuff here and was hoping to be one of many. But now it just looks like I'm very needy. But some of the things that came to mind for me after the presentation at the last meeting, and again, these are just things that were top of mind. This is not at all, I think, an exhaustive list of everything that I could possibly think of as far as reprioritizing or rescheduling projects. But the first, and thanks to Kayla for rewording all this into the accepted format. The first bullet point is basically accelerate the dedicated bike lane network downtown, focus on network and with the dedicated, we're kind of on a 1 per year plan for the first 3 years anyway. And my desire is that there's more than 1 per year. It's you know, I don't have a, well, we should do this street next or that street next or these 3 streets next year, but I just wanted to see, give my full support for the program as it is. I think it's really successful so far with the one that we have and the one that's under construction, but I just wanted to urge that along. Secondly, streetlights, the streetlights on the Packard corridor, particularly from State to Stadium, were, I think, pushed back to 2022. And I think it's a pretty well-known mid-block crossing. There's difficulty on all ends, and there's been a lot of commentary on the Packard mid-block crosswalks. There are some crosswalks that are not well lit, and so I wanted to, if it's possible, to move that forward from 2022 to, move it forward. That was the desire for the second bullet point. The third one is a little bit more out there. I recall the South State Street corridor plan from a number of years ago. And I know that the traffic configuration, traffic routing, especially near the mall on I-94, is tricky. And I anecdotally, I do see a lot of near misses, and I have seen accidents as cars, there are more and more hotels there, and out of town people being right by the highway, and especially people leaving Wolverine Tower, they have to dart across, slam on the brakes, and dart back out. It just, I think it's a known issue. So I don't know where the plan went, where it is now, but I haven't heard anything of it moving forward in a couple of years. So maybe that's just my ignorance, but and then the last bullet point, I think that's the last one, yeah. A consideration for making permanent some or all of the Healthy Streets program that we've seen this year, the downtown core street closures that are now weekly, a consideration to make those more permanent seasonally. The arterial changes that I think are going into effect right around now. I haven't seen any in the last couple of days, but depending on how that goes. And then the neighborhood slow streets, just I'm not sure if it would be a capital budget item for some of these. Maybe the downtown core closures would be more capital intensive, but it's just an idea to consider making permanent the pilot programs that are happening right now this year. That is all. That's all that's on this list, but not all that, I think are important.
Great. Are there, I'd say let's open it up to questions and comments, but also if there are other thoughts about things we might want to incorporate in our recommendations that are not on this list, I think we do have a little time to talk about that. If it starts to get really in depth, I think we're going to need to pause. We don't have a ton of time scheduled, but if there are actually, Kayla, if you could end the screen sharing so that I can just see everyone so I can call on folks as needed. Yes, Commissioner Parsons.
First, Brett, thank you so much for taking this on. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. My only question really I'm fine with your list overall. It's fine. This looks great. In terms of number one, the modify the scope for bike lanes, I was wondering if there was a reason why it was specifically dedicated bike lanes in that, or if we could tweak the language so it's not just bike lanes, but bicycle infrastructure instead. Sometimes there might be easier fixes that would be low cost. For instance, the use of may use full lanes or advisory bike lanes. So it's not necessarily dedicated, which is, I guess, just maybe a tweak in what we call them, but I wanted to make sure that wasn't taking away from something you had in mind in particular.
No, that wouldn't. I mean, I was really speaking to the dedicated bike lane, like the William Street one now, and the Ashley that's under, or is it First Street that's under construction right now. But I have no problem at all opening it to the network in general. I would be happy for that.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Because like the William Street, I believe that's a cycle path, a cycle track. Raymond might know more about the nomenclature and exactly what is what. So dedicated bicycle infrastructure, for instance, allows us a little bit more flexibility. So we could just do dedicated bicycle infrastructure that interfaces with arterials for that second portion. And the first one could be construction of bicycle, what did I write down? Implementation of bicycle infrastructure. So that would allow just some flexibility. Maybe it's a bicycle boulevard to get people off of Huron and onto Washington, whatever it is that makes that network happen. I think it's the network that we're both agreeing to, like, yes, we need to figure out this network, and just a little bit more flexibility in terms of bike lanes, I think might be cool. I don't know, we can float that by others too, but I want to thank you very much for what you've done and how you presented it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I like all the comments, and I would be fine with all those changes. Thank you.
Great, so we can maybe treat those as friendly amendments. I think I'm using the right words. Yes, Commissioner Hess.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. The one other thing I wanted to note, somewhat on that, along those lines, I believe last year the Transportation Commission had made a recommendation to the CIP related to, and Commissioner Parsons can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think it was Elmwood. That is still on the table. So we assume that that's still in the mix. I think having this discussion now about which projects, the timing is perfect. We're not necessarily in project identification part. You know, what Commissioner Hadamaki outlined earlier was we're going through kind of process and setting up the framework for how to evaluate projects and score them against one another. So having this discussion now is great because you'll be ahead of the game, and when the time comes to kind of call for projects, this commission will already have kind of a list. So I just wanted to add maybe to the list that Commissioner Hadamaki reviewed is what the Transportation Commission suggested last year, which has been kind of in a holding pattern waiting for this new CIP development.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
So, yeah, that it was Elmwood, and that recommendation was made, and I've checked with Deb Goslin, the CIP program manager, and she has that, and she's intending to consider it during the plan development phase. I guess the clarification that I would just need to know is, are you looking to add that to this list and take action on that same recommendation again? Or make just some single line reference that that recommendation still stands and you want to reinforce what was passed last year?
I think the latter probably makes sense. It sounds like if she's already got that on her radar, then yeah, just to sort of make sure it gets in the mix. Other questions or comments or thoughts? Councilmember Griswold?
Two items. One, the street closures downtown for dining and for shopping, those have been very successful. And I just want to mention that the Main Street area dining has been extended until midnight. And there was a resolution before council on Monday night, but then it was determined that the city administrator had authority, so the resolution was pulled. So there's more flexibility to expand that program in the future based on need. And the other item, it was my understanding that all the mid-block crosswalks had been prioritized for positive contrast lighting. And so I'm just wondering, Raymond, is that maybe a separate list that needs to be overlaid on the Packard lighting list?
Councilmember Griswold, you're absolutely right. Packard is already identified on that list. One of the things that we had tried to do was we tried to kind of fast track Packard, and we applied for a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant. You may recall last year that grant was not funded. So we're kind of back to the drawing board in terms of where it fits in. Packard, some of the lights on Packard score very high based on our metrics. So I suspect that they will be pretty kind of top of list just based on kind of the adjacent land uses and all the activity that happens along Packard.
Okay, good.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
Sorry, just one last clarification. I appreciate Commissioner Hadamaki's list. I did want to add a little bit of nuance to the South State Street corridor. The interchange and kind of the overpass bridge there, that part of State Street is actually controlled by Michigan Department of Transportation because it's part of kind of the freeway system. So it complicates things a little bit in terms of how much the city can do within its right-of-way versus what the MDOT does within their right-of-way. I will say there is a 94 operations study that's currently going on. I couldn't tell you the latest on it. It's been a while since they last met, but that interchange and kind of that segment of State Street with that kind of unique acceleration lane, you know, as you come off and merge, that is on their radar. The city has brought it up repeatedly in those meetings as kind of a safety concern. And so not trying to discourage you from including that in your recommendation, but just know that kind of the limits to what the city can do are somewhat finite. And it would have to be probably coordinated with MDOT in terms of the true fix to that program, or that project rather.
Thank you, that's helpful. So it sounds like we are ready to move this forward. So with those changes to the, oh, sorry, Kayla. Yeah.
Can I just, as you do this, just to highlight what I've captured as of those changes that I heard, and that is in the first recommendation, the first bullet point to change the words that say the construction of bike lanes to say the implementation of bicycle infrastructure. And then I think that Bradley, you were saying that the second reference where it says dedicated bike lanes, that was okay to stay as is. But we can probably work out those details, I guess, offline if that's not the case. But, okay, so
the first one is spot on. The second one, it can be whatever captures it again. It can be dedicated bicycle infrastructure is okay. Low stress network corridors. I think any of those sort of capture anything that moves away from specifically a dedicated bike lane. I think is friendly with everybody.
Yeah. All right. So the same revision to both of those, I think, is what we'll
got it.
Yeah.
That's helpful. I wasn't sure where we were there, so that's helpful. And then the other change that I noted is to add a reference that in some way is reinstating the recommendations regarding Elmwood Bike Boulevard that were made in September 2019, whenever it was.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. So
if we're gonna do that, can we add in the Washington Bike Boulevard too? Because I think that was also recommended to move up. Raymond might remember. I think Linda Diane might remember better than I do, but I think that was a 2018 recommendation to move that one up. That went through this body as well. I don't know. For me, both of those are captured by the first bullet point, but I appreciate Mr. Hess reminding us that we should remind everyone that these have already been put forward and we're still wanting those to go through quickly.
maybe we should say any outstanding recommendations from prior years, Kayla, and then you can, separate from this, figure out how many of those there are from how many years. We haven't existed that many years, so, but we'll bring them all back again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the CIP recommendations as amended and forward them to City Planning Commission? So I see Commissioner Boland, and can I get a second? Was that Commissioner Smith? Were you raising your hand? Yes, okay. Great, so then do we have to do a roll call vote for these? No, okay. No. So I'm gonna ask all those in favor to please raise your hand. And Bradley and Jim, we can't see you, so maybe give us a quick eye.
Aye.
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 Great, thank you. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, so it passes. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to invite Councilmember Kathy Griswold to present on the Chapter 40 Trees and Vegetation Ordinance. Sorry, you're still muted.
This has a long history and it seems to have grown in complexity over the years. And so I think this is a good opportunity to go back and look at it, see how we can simplify it. And that seems to be what's indicated in the questions to staff as well as the staff responses. So rather than go through every point here, I was just going to list some general goals and see if there's agreement there. The first one is we just want to simplify it. The second, that it needs to be based on data with a focus on safety. We don't really care what kind of vegetation it is. If it's restricting sight distance, then it needs to be addressed. And the staff recommendation was a height limit of 18 inches in the right-of-way. And I think that's reasonable, and that way we're not having different heights for different types of vegetation. For the 8-foot clearance over the sidewalks and over the roadway, they want to specify vertical clearance, and that makes sense. Previously, there was actually a diagram that showed the intersection site distance triangle. And I know the legal department took that out, but I really found it helpful. And if we're not going to have it in the ordinance, maybe we could at least have it in the training material. Again, I think we need to focus on education and encouragement rather than enforcement. And in the past, complaints have been made, and then it pits one neighbor against another neighbor, and that's not what we want. We want to have a good education program. And I received a call from Tom Crawford today, and while he has community standards working on some of the violations, he said that he really wanted to have a robust education program next spring. And while the education program is not part of the ordinance, I think that along with the ordinance should be some education material, as well as how it's going to be implemented by staff. So my other recommendation would be to send this to the Environmental Commission so that they can address all the different types of vegetation. And I know that there was a lawsuit that the city lost a few years ago over the wording in section 3.16 on private property outside of a cultivated bed or planned natural landscape. Well, so if you have a natural landscape where things just grow like butterfly bushes, but you didn't plan it, then it's not a planned natural area. And so anyway, again, we ended up spending time and funds with this lawsuit because one neighbor was complaining about what was growing next door on the side lot line. So I would like to simplify that as well, so we don't have these issues in the future. So I can go into more detail if anyone's interested in a specific section.
Why don't we open it up to questions and comments?
Okay.
See where we go from there. So are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Hadamaki?
Yeah, I guess my main impression is that so the proposed council resolution only addresses vegetation on private property, and really the only substantive change is allowing essentially grass to be 18 instead of 12 inches. And but in the city right of way, which is chapter 315, there are no proposed changes. So in the city right of way, that would remain 12 inches, but private property could now be 18 inches. That seems to be the only real change. And I just see, confusion if somebody says, well, it's 18 inches everywhere, but no, the city right of way is now 12 inches. The rest of your yard is 18. And so there's just, that's really the only change. And then there's, so I just see confusion that could result from that. And also there's just there's nothing addressing safety in this at all. So I don't really have an opinion either way, because there's nothing really affecting pedestrian safety in the proposed ordinance. So other than the confusion that could result, I don't think this really touches anything that we'd be interested in, although I'd really like to go down that road if we have the opportunity to recommend. And I think, Councilmember Griswold started talking about that, which is what, staff recommends, I think 12 inches for everything, not just grass. So are those recommendations we would send back to council for this resolution, or recommendations for a new resolution? I don't know how that would go.
Yeah, I think that we could recommend that staff rewrite this section with a focus on safety and incorporate the recommendations that they made already, and then have that recommended ordinance reviewed by the Environmental Commission in case they have anything they'd like to add to it from an environmental or sustainability issue. And the only other issue I had is right now at intersections, the height is 36 inches and in the sight distance triangle. So if you're looking around the corner and you want to see, to see if there's a pedestrian coming, with more energy efficient vehicles, the driver is sitting lower. And I really like to see that lowered rather than remain at 36, because I think 36 is too high for the average small vehicle.
Commissioner Hadamaki, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Just to know, yeah, you recommended this going to the Environmental Commission. I don't know if it has also or should also go to the Commission on Disabilities for their consideration too. It seems like maybe that would be a good thing for them to consider.
Okay. Could I make a motion that we refer this to staff for a rewrite based on safety, and then refer it back to the Transportation Commission, the Environmental Commission, and the Commission on Disability for their input before it goes back to council?
Rather than asking staff for a rewrite first, I wonder if it would make sense to send it to the Environmental Commission first, that their input can influence whatever rewrite happens, and then there's only one, the staff only has to rewrite it one time. Can we suggest that something go directly to the Environmental Commission from here?
I think so, and with the Environmental Commission, it's probably just a few word choices, but I'd defer to Raymond Hess on how he wants to handle it, whatever is easiest for staff.
Yeah, I'd have to confer with Mr. Crawford and maybe Mr. Postma, because, council members, this was a council-sponsored resolution, so I want to be careful about, process and what parts staff should be recommending on, which aren't. Obviously, this commission can make that recommendation. I just want to make sure I don't step on toes. So I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I think we're happy to lend a hand. This is also not a section of the code we typically maintain, so we probably have to coordinate with other departments just to make sure that we're not looking at it from our lens, just through our lens, but looking at like planning and community standards, those that would enforce it. So there's just some process on my end that I'd have to think through, and I'd have to probably speak to some other departments just to understand what that looks like. But that's a me problem. We'll figure that out. You all tell us what you want us to do, and we'll figure it out.
Oh, okay. And if you determine that you need clearer direction from council, we could talk and draft a resolution to bring forward to council to give staff clearer direction. Basically, tell us what you want council to recommend to you, and we'll do it.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like, Councilmember Griswold, would it be friendly to you if we say, rather than voting on a recommendation right now, or at least the recommendation the revisions, if we instead recommend that council, so we bounce it to council to bounce it to the Environmental Commission, and then once the Environmental Commission has given their feedback, whatever happens next, happens next. And there may eventually be revisions that come to us to review and recommend, but that we're not quite there yet. Does that sound?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Kayla, is that something that we need to vote on, or can we just say that?
I think that you'll want to take a vote. And I think that what you just said, Molly, makes sense. But I am willing to do that follow-up and see. I think that you can refer it directly to the Environmental Commission. So like to save a step, if you pass the motion such that it's flexible, that if you can refer directly to Environmental Commission, we will. If it needs to go back to council before that, we will. And then, I've captured some notes on the items that you would be interested in seeing in a potential revision, but I think that the more that commissioners can put into your own words and send that over by email. I hear you saying that you want to see a focus and emphasis on safety. And Councilmember Griswold and Councilmember Hadamaki, thank you both, because you highlighted some specific details there. but having a written list of the requests from commissioners would be really helpful, I think, when staff go into a rewrite.
Great. So then let's get a motion to refer these revisions to the Environmental Commission directly if possible, and if not, to council for referral to the Environmental Commission. Can I get a motion to do that? Councilmember Griswold, and can I have a second? Commissioner Hadamaki. Great. So we're all going to vote again. Raise your hands for aye.
Can we have discussion on the motion?
Sorry. Oh, yes. Okay. Discussion on the motion first. Any additional comments, questions about the motion?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, there was some mention of referring to the Commission on Disability Issues. Is that going to be done? I will note that their next meeting is not until September. So if the time frame's an issue, maybe don't want to do it, but.
This actually was referred, I'm trying to look to confirm, but I believe that when City Council in June referred it to the Transportation Commission, it was to both the Commission on Disability Issues and the Transportation Commission. There have been a couple other instances in the past where that's happened as well, where they referred to both.
There was no July and August meeting though, so yeah, it's very possible it was referred and just never got discussed because there's no meeting.
Right. Is that consistent, Councilmember Griswold? Do you happen to know offhand?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I imagine, Commissioner Hull, that this could be on the radar for your commission at your September meeting already to discuss the same.
Okay.
Commissioner Felt, did you also have?
Yes, I listened to the comments so far, and the written comments, especially about, this isn't much of a change, and just have remained a little bit puzzled. And I think what's necessary that would help the Environmental Commission if they were to receive this is a little bit of a note about why this is important. Because it's not at all clear to me still. But just what this is trying to accomplish. And I think that should go along with the original resolution a little bit more clearly. Maybe it's there and it got disconnected. But I'm not convinced that the resolution itself is at all necessary.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Griswold, is there any additional context that you can provide us and also the Environmental Commission when they get to this?
I think that the questions and staff's responses are very helpful. And maybe just to restate that the intent is to simplify it and to focus on safety, especially the safety of vulnerable roadway users. So because right now it's focused more on the type of vegetation.
I see. Okay. Other discussion? Yes, Commissioner Burson.
I think maybe Kathy, you could respond to this in a similar vein that Linda Diane was questioning. And maybe a way to clarify is, I am too curious where this is coming from. Is it resident driven that they would like to have 18 inches instead of 12 inches for their vegetation on their private property? Is this staff driven for simplicity? Is this something else driven? I think that's the sort of context that might be helpful for both this commission as well as the Environmental Commission and the Disability Commission to figure out. Is it a safety issue paramount, or is there other things at play that can help understand where this is coming from?
Well, Council Member Hayner brought it forward, and I think it was to allow more naturalized areas, and that he received complaints from neighbors that wanted to have natural, like flower gardens and just natural grasses, And so there was some conflict between the people who wanted a more natural area and the people that wanted the turf grass and the more more formal lawn. And so that's what started it. When I became aware of it, I said, well, this is an opportunity to look at the ordinance and improve it from a safety standpoint, because it's really more than just turf grass versus natural area. And then I was aware of the lawsuit that resulted because of the wording, whatever the planned natural area. And so I thought that needed to be cleaned up.
Yeah. I thank you for that, and I think that will help the Environmental
Okay.
Commission as well. You know, I'm curious to know if the Environmental Commission comes in and says, yes, an 18-inch plant does a lot better for the watershed than a 12-inch, and
Right.
then the Transportation Commission can come in and weigh in on the safety factors involved with that. So I think that's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Are there other discussion, comments, questions? Okay, thanks. So I think now we're ready to take a vote. So all those in favor, please raise your hand, or if we can't see you, say aye.
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 Great. Sorry, those opposed? And any abstentions? Oh, Commissioner Felt, was that an abstention? Sorry, you're still muted.
It was opposed.
Opposed, okay. All right, so the motion passes. And thank you all. So let's see what's next. All right, we're now going to invite Kayla Coleman to provide a brief update on the Fernwood Avenue traffic calming process.
Thank you. So this is the traffic calming project area is Fernwood Avenue from Packard to Lorraine. And this is a project area that has gone through the city's traffic calming program. That's the new and improved one as of a couple years ago that the Transportation Commission played a role in helping to shape those improvements. And this traffic calming project area they go through a series of public engagement, a couple of meetings, and then a final poll in the end. And they received 79% support of the responses that were received. So 120 addresses in the project area, 28 of those returned final polls. And out of that, 22 supported the final plan. The final plan was developed with neighborhood input and the public participation at those meetings. And this includes a raised intersection at Fernwood and Lorraine, a speed table after that, a raised crosswalk, another speed table, and a median island. And you should see that final plan included with your agenda materials. The next step, so we're here tonight bringing the draft resolution that is a draft of what City Council might consider, and the Transportation Commission has asked for you to weigh in on whether or not you would recommend that Council approve such a resolution. And from here, it would go to City Council, and that Council will consider whether or not to give final approval for construction. If this project area is approved, it's anticipated for construction in 2021 construction season. And I'll turn it over to Raymond to fill in any blanks that I missed or correct any misstatements.
No, thank you, Kayla. I think you're spot on. The only thing I do want to note on the draft resolution that you have in your packet is we're still working through kind of the financial piece on it. Just so you know, the budget for traffic calming is in the realm of $130,000 annually. This project exceeds that in large part because of the raised intersection, which is a larger device than we've traditionally deploy. A lot of times it's, speed tables or speed humps. This is a full raised intersection. So the price tag is a little bit more expensive. As Kayla mentioned, she's right on. It's for, right now we're expecting it to be the next construction season, but that spans 2 fiscal years, right? Because our fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th. So we would take some of this current fiscal year and maybe stack it with next fiscal year, but it would just seamlessly be constructed in the summer of next year. I only just want to highlight that based on some discussions we've had with Marty Prashan, who as chief of staff and kind of one of the financial gurus, we might be able to rearrange that a little differently. So the final draft that goes to council, some of that language related to fiscal years and the funding and all that might be different than what's in the resolution before you. The outcome should be the same. Maybe it will allow us to advance it sooner, but at the end of the day, the project is still the project. The recommendations are what they are. It just might affect the funding and year or the implementation schedule.
Thank you for that clarification. So we're going to get my order of operations correct. We're going to get a motion and a second, and then we're going to discuss it, and then we're going to vote on it. So can I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve the resolution to approve the installation of traffic calming devices on Fernwood Avenue? Commissioner Hadamaki, can I get a second? Commissioner Boland. Okay, so now questions and discussion. Commissioner Woods.
So, Mr. Hess, then can you explain to us in the resolution how the figure of the 70,000 is in it? I'm just trying to make sure I understand where the difference is going to be made up to pay for it.
Yeah, so what that 70,000 is referring to is kind of, and don't quote me on these terms because they're not the right terms, but it's kind of like earmarking 70,000 from one fiscal year and pulling it forward to the next. So in that way, that project cost can be made whole and the whole project can be implemented. So it's kind of just an accounting sort of exercise, not to overly simplify it, but the idea is to just try to figure out how to fully fund the project when the project cost exceeds how much we get in an annual allocation for traffic calming.
Okay.
But again, that piece may change a little bit based on what I stated a moment ago. We're still working through some of that. We have a meeting tomorrow to discuss it, actually.
Okay. And also, so did you indicate that about $132,000 or so is allocated each year for this sort of traffic calming? And if so, is that like not enough? Because if one project could cost $20,000 more, and then if a couple of neighborhoods work that process, it seems like we could always be kind of having to borrow forward in order to pay for it. So I guess I'm asking you and Councilmember Griswold, can we get more funds into that line?
Okay. Yeah, if I could maybe take first crack at it, Commissioner Woods, thank you for that. I will say, give credit where credit is due. Council did bump up the budget for this program, I think 2 years ago. Kayla Coleman can remind me, I think our budget used to only be around the $30,000, $40,000 mark. And that definitely wasn't enough. We could really only do one project per year, and those were smaller projects. So in the last biennium budget, we suggested or requested kind of a tripling. And actually, I think even Commissioner Parsons and the folks who helped with the traffic calming program development, that was one of the recommendations that came out of that, as I recall, from this commission. And so council obliged and gave us the additional budget. I will say it's hard to fully understand and anticipate what the costs will be. So our last traffic calming that we installed was on the side of Church Service Drive. Again, I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but it was probably in the $20,000 to $30,000 range, which, at that cost, you could do 4 per year. But this one, because of kind of the length and the sort of, magnitude of the improvements that are proposed, it's just a heavier ticket item. Last year, we were actually under budget because the Crest traffic calming actually didn't get approved or wasn't supported by the neighborhood. So, we had extra budget at the end of the year. We actually put it towards maintenance of existing traffic calming. So there was some preventive maintenance that was done on existing speed humps. So in a way, it was good that we had a little bit of extra. This year, if this goes through, obviously we will have busted the budget. So it fluctuates. It's hard to know what the right number is. Some years 130 is not enough. Some years 130 is too much. So I wish I could give you a perfect number, but unfortunately I can't.
Councilmember Griswold.
I just want to add that, yes, council did increase the budget for traffic calming. And I think it's just important to balance the traffic calming with the need for streetlights at the mid-block crosswalk. So these are difficult decisions, and we want to do what's going to improve safety.
Other questions or comments?
I don't know if you can see me, Molly. Sorry,
Oh, sorry. Nope, I can't.
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got my video playing, but apparently it's not going through. This is Brad. I just want to echo what Raymond had said, that the recommendation, I think, to triple the budget was through the traffic calming committee of the Transportation Commission, and I'm happy to revisit that. And I also do wonder if this is getting into CIP territory now. Is there a dedicated CIP line that we could be looking at potentially? The other thing is that if Blewett Road had gone through, which was on the northern corridor, it would have been like 3 years worth, I think, of funding. So I really appreciate Commissioner Woods bringing up the fiscal reality that you can only potentially do one a year, or maybe even one every 3 years, or something like that. I also understand that the nature of budgeting like this is really up in the air, because some of these projects go through, some of them don't. It's resident driven, so you never know what you're going to get. But what I want to highlight is that I am super, super excited to see that median island placed near Packard on Fernwood. And I appreciate what the staff has done to move in those sort of directions. So it's not just speed bumps. The raised intersections. Like, I'm so happy that it's not just speed bumps, because the raised intersections are going to highlight those crosswalks that are in front of a school. So I think it's money well worth spent. I just want to appreciate staff in that effort, and I'm going to fully support this resolution.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so it looks like we are ready to take a vote. So all those in favor, please raise your hands or say aye.
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 And all those opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, so this motion passes. Thank you all very much. And now we are ready for the staff update from Commissioner Hess. We all received the staff report providing the updates with our agenda materials, and it's also in Legistar, so this will just be a highlight reel.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as was indicated, I'll just kind of quickly go through. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. So for street resurfacing, Geddes and Oak Brook are now complete, and work on Boardwalk, South Main, and Granger are expected or have just recently begun. Barton Drive just changed the end post, the goal post on this one. I think initially it said it was going to end in August. That's been pushed out to October. Ellsworth Research Park Drive, this has been on the report for a while. We are actually starting to work out there. Concrete bases were poured, mast arms were ordered, and so some of that work will be happening over several months, maybe into the new year. Washtenaw Avenue Sidewalk Gap Project, construction began the week of May 18th and is expected to be complete by the end of this month. Plymouth Road Capital Maintenance work is currently underway and is expected to be complete by late August or early September. Moving on to page 2, People Friendly Streets Initiative. There's talk about the Healthy Streets installation is scheduled for August 2020. There's another update on that later that you'll see. And there are project websites being maintained by both the DDA and the city on Healthy Streets initiatives. Scioto Church from Maple to 7th. We're currently working with neighbors on some on-street parking there and possible removal to accommodate bike lanes. So that's one of the discussions that's going on, and see how much support there is for that change. There's a new section on the bottom of page 2 that talks about the street millage and sidewalk millage program. This was something that the Transportation Commission contemplated, I believe, at your last meeting. That was passed by City Council on July 20th, which will put it on the ballot, as I understand it, in November. And so the details surrounding that millage are identified at the bottom of page 2. Again, getting back to Healthy Streets, There were some additional local neighborhood slow streets. 7 streets were added. So we do expect, we put out some advanced signage. So, again, you may recall we put out signage in advance to notify people that this change will be coming. And then if we get, a lot of opposition from it, we'll not put them in. But if we don't get opposition, we go ahead and install those. So those are expected to be deployed at the same time that the non-residential streets. So the Catherine Miller, Packard, Division, Main. We're hoping that those will be installed soon. We're currently working with the contractor on their implementation schedule. We are competing with kind of finite resources here. The contractor is very busy with construction, and so we're kind of shoehorning, these barricades and these other things in. So we're trying to work around their schedule and find a way that we can get these deployed as soon as possible. Lowertown Mobility Study, there was a virtual public outreach event held just a couple of weeks ago on July 29th. And we got some good feedback on that project, and we're moving forward with what we heard and rolling those into the recommendations. Office of Sustainability and Innovations, they are currently working on an electric bicycle discount program. So if you are interested in that, there is a link provided in the report. You can follow that for eligible discounts on e-bicycle models. Streetlight implementation, number of installations for this calendar year is 31. Previously it was 27 in the last report. And number of streetlight outages, which have been addressed by DTE, is up to 754. That was 615 last report. So over 100 and nearly 40 new in the last month. Traffic calming, we just talked about Fernwood, so you probably don't need me to say anything on that. And lastly, the transportation plan update. Staff just received a draft version of the very first cut of the plan last week, and so we're currently reviewing that. We're giving some initial impressions back to the consultant. It's very preliminary, so there's still a lot of holes in the plan and to be filled in, but we wanted to kind of start that process of review, and then that will ultimately be vetted publicly. We have a technical advisory committee and a community advisory committee, and then ultimately the public at large too will have a chance to review that once we kind of polish it up a little bit more. So Madam Chair, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have. And if I don't have an answer, I will get back to you with it.
Great, thank you. So any questions? Councilmember Griswold.
I was wondering if there is a recommended width going from a main street to a slow street, because I know that we put the barricade out, and sometimes the street is relatively wide and sometimes the street is narrow. And in one case, there was actually a bulb out, and so it was already, before the barricade went up, just allowed 2 cars to go through. So I was wondering if there's a standard.
Do you have I don't think I completely understand the question. Do you have a specific location in mind, or is it just?
Yes. I was visiting someone on 3rd, and I was coming out of 3rd and getting ready to make a left-hand turn onto Huron Street. And there was a barricade there, and someone was coming on Huron quite quick. They were driving fast, and they almost collided with my car, the front end of my car, and then they sort of swerved and stopped in the middle of the intersection. And so it didn't seem like there was room for 2 cars, and I wasn't sure if that was the intent or what the standard was, because the traffic is pretty fast on Huron.
Right. So that was related to one of the construction projects, right? That wasn't a healthy street deployment?
No, it's a healthy street, but there was also construction in the area, but I'm pretty sure the barricade was for a healthy street on 3rd.
3rd, okay.
3rd between. We can offline if you want.
Okay, yeah, we'll follow up just so I can understand the exact locations. I mean, yeah, there are minimum lane widths. Typically we normally shoot for around 11 feet wide. We have in some instances gone down to 10 feet wide. There are some arterials where they're a little bit wider, but according to NACTO standards and other standards, 10 or even 11 feet is acceptable. It also depends on other characteristics of the roadway too, in terms of kind of what purpose it serves. But yeah, we can follow up with you on the specifics and kind of assess that situation and see if there are any changes that are needed.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions or comments?
I know you can't see me, but
I
Brad
can
was.
see you. Yes,
Oh,
go
you
ahead.
can see me now.
I can see you.
Thank you. Raymond, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about the transportation plan update. I'm just curious about timeline. I assume this body at some point is going to be asked to recommend to council that they approve it. I'm hesitant after I'd filled out one of the last surveys and saw how many really sketchy places were identified as low stress networks, for instance. How many times do you guess that this body is going to be able to see that plan in draft form and comment on it and help with the revision process? And when do you anticipate is that final sort of formal, yes, this commission supports it? And I know I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball right now, but sort of best guess or lay it out so that we have a better idea of the timeline that we're looking at.
Yeah, my crystal ball does not work very well, just so you know. So obviously that is to this commission's discretion, right? We will be asking this commission for a recommendation on that plan before it moves forward. If that takes, more than one meeting, that's, the discretion of this body. I haven't spoken to Eli Cooper on this specific issue. Eli, as I think many of you know, is the project manager on that project. Typically what we've done in the past is we try to coordinate the technical advisory committee meetings, the citizen advisory committee meetings with the transportation commission schedule so that, the consultant is an out of town consultant so that when they come into town, they can kind of knock out as many meetings as possible. So I suspect that we will continue in that vein so that the draft plan as it's presented to the CAC and the TAC, that you will also get a presentation from the consultant as well, maybe as early as the September meeting. Kayla can correct me if I'm wrong, and I saw a little bit of communication on that front between her and Eli. And Kayla, was the thought that we would be seeking a recommendation as early as September, or would that just be the presentation and then a future recommendation at a future meeting?
That I haven't heard. I think we need to check with Eli about what he envisions. He has said that he was hoping to have something ready to bring to the commission by September. But I haven't yet heard, as Raymond said, that usually has coincided with a community advisory committee meeting, a technical advisory committee meeting, a general public open house or open electronic meeting, and we haven't yet scheduled any of those. So perhaps September is like an intermediary step of giving the commission some initial information to respond to. But I don't think we'll have gotten through those other public input points to be ready to say, this is what we heard from the public at large.
I'll just reassure you, staff is very interested in, hearing from this commission. So rest assured, we will bring it to you. We will, give you the opportunity to review it and answer any questions you have and entertain any recommendations you have as well. So have confidence in the fact that you are definitely part of the review and kind of recommendation process as we move this thing forward.
Great. Thank you both. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Commissioner Woods.
I was wondering if staff could give us any update or information about those electric scooters that sometimes are seen around town. And now that students will be moving back in the next few weeks, have we heard or what can we anticipate if anyone starts to ask us what we might know about it?
Yeah, so a couple things to note. Thank you, Commissioner Woods, for that question. So spin scooters, I'm trying to remember my exact timeline. I want to say that agreement was reinstated in July. The way these work, currently, though long-term we'll probably change it, but currently we get approval from council for an interim right-of-way use agreement, which allows them to just operate the scooters in the right-of-way. That agreement is for 3 months, but then staff, Tom Crawford, city administrator, or who he delegates, has the ability to administratively reauthorize that, and that's per the council resolution, up to 3 times. So the idea is that could go upwards of a year in 3-month increments. We built in that 3-month increment because if, for example, a company isn't holding up their end of the bargain as they operate the scooters, there's an opportunity for us to pull that agreement back. That's actually what we had to do with Bird scooters, as you may recall. But Spin has been has proven to be a better partner in terms of working with the community. They are deployed, they are on the streets, so I'm sure you've seen them. We do also have in A2 Fix It, and this may have been a recommendation from Councilmember Griswold, I can't recall, but there is an A2 Fix It you can report scooter problems. I think it's under the category of abandoned scooters. So we are monitoring that. I actually spoke to IT yesterday about some of those responses that have come in. I am happy to report that since the scooters have been redeployed, we've only gotten very few complaints about the redeployment. I can't remember the exact number, but it was less than 10 in several months. I think there were like 2 in July and 3 at the beginning of August. So far we're not seeing a lot of problems, but we are monitoring the situation so that if there are kind of problematic areas or intersections, we will engage with Spin to kind of find a solution for that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so it looks like we are ready to move on to liaison reports. So any commissioners who specifically serve as a liaison to another body or organization are invited to provide brief reports and updates. Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, regarding the state crosswalk law, the resolution in support of it was tabled at the last meeting, and I did mention that the Transportation Commission did not support the language as written. And one of the reasons for the delay is a Sam Schwartz consulting contract was approved by council, but I was told today that it was held up in the legal department, the purchase order for review. And so we don't have a date for when we're going to have the professional engineer with Vision Zero expertise do this assessment. And I know that initially the report was due back to the Transportation Commission tonight. And so that's been pushed back as well. Regarding the Michigan Department of Transportation, a lot of work has been done. Councilmember Ackerman chaired a meeting to try to work on MDOT strategy, and I want to acknowledge that Representative Yusuf Rabi and State Senator Jeff Irwin were there, and we're going to reach out to some of the University of Michigan leadership to try to create a more responsive environment, because MDOT has jurisdiction over Huron, Washtenaw, North Main, and we desperately need an upgrade in RRFBs to the Huron crosswalk near Thayer, and we are trying to get that done this year. So there are a number of us working on that, and there will be a jury trial, at least it's scheduled for Monday, regarding that crosswalk and the crash that occurred in January of 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Commissioner Woods. Oh, sorry. Commissioner Woods.
That's fine. Thank you. Just to mention a couple of things which have already moved on to City Council, and so perhaps Commissioner Griswold can indicate if there's anything in particular that happened once these items went to Council. But I do want to note that the lighting ordinance, which has been worked on a lot and which obviously has some ramifications for safety, has moved from planning and moved on to city council. I'm not sure when it will appear on that agenda, but as some of our discussion was talking about mid-block areas as people are crossing, it occurred to me that perhaps that's something that will come up, maybe, I don't know, when it gets to council, about whether or not there is enough lighting in those areas. And sometimes there is a bit of not conflict, but you can see the sides of both sides of an issue sometimes when it comes to lighting and having enough lighting versus those who are concerned about lighting and whether or not it's too much and its environmental effects, especially on birds and things like that. So that's something to think about. I did want to mention one development, which I think folks around this table might be excited about, because I know there is some excitement in the community about it, and it's a development which is going to take place over on Platte Road on the acreage there near the Washtenaw County Farm, which used to be a juvenile, not detention center, but I think it was a justice department or something like that. But at any rate, it's going to be the site, assuming that it passes through city council, of a very unique kind of a development, which will have affordable housing, about 50 new units of affordable housing as a part of the development, but also other residential areas that will be privately owned. And I'm not going to do it justice trying to describe it to you right now, but perhaps if you go to the planning website, you may be able to click on the Viridian development and get more information about it. But it has been a very good, positive partnership from a number of different entities who are concerned about making sure that our area is affordable and has, good housing, looking at density, of course, and also some transportation issues around that as well. So, and it's been a couple of years in the making. It's a collaboration between Avalon Housing and I think it's Thrive Collaborative. And so it's exciting. I just wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about that project, and I appreciate also having an update from the Planning Commission. That's great to hear. Any other liaison reports? Councilmember Griswold.
I can go last. I just wanted to add something regarding the lighting ordinance. Would you like me to do that now, or?
Sure. I don't see any other liaison reports, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. I actually looked at the lighting ordinance draft probably at least 6 months ago. And if you have good positive contrast lighting that just shines down on the crosswalk, that's the most optimal lighting from a safety standpoint. And if there's a shield on it, you have almost no lighting that's going out, say, into someone's front window or creating glare. So I think the lighting ordinance is actually going to improve safety as well as reduce lighting where we don't want it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to move straight on to commission member communications. So this is an opportunity for any commission member to provide reports and updates. Okay. Oh, Commissioner Parsons.
3 quick things. One, I just want to thank staff for everything that they're doing. These are difficult times. And you guys must be working overtime to make all these things happen. I just want to thank you for that. Second is that, as I reported last month, just with my ear to the ground and talking to residents, the Healthy Streets programs and neighborhoods, all I hear is people love them and they want them to stay. So I wanted to communicate that real quick. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the Vision Zero focus that I'm really hoping that next transportation plan update includes. There was a really tragic accident that occurred with a bicyclist in Ypsilanti over the course of the last month. I'm happy to share news reports, but it involved an infant that was killed in the back of a bicycle trailer and a mother who was seriously injured. on a street that had no business being 40 miles an hour, but was 40 miles an hour. And as we all know, 90% of those crashes are going to end up with a fatality, and it did, and it was a tragic one. So I just want to reinforce that Vision Zero for me is really important as we move forward, and that we continue to pursue it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Parsons. Any other commissioner communications? Okay, so I'm going to move on to a call for agenda items. And Kayla, I don't know if you wanted to go over really quickly what we have currently lined up.
Sure, I can do that. So as Raymond mentioned, it's possible that we'll have the comprehensive transportation plan draft ready for to provide an update at the September meeting. Also, the Sam Short supplemental work that Councilmember Griswold mentioned, I don't know if Raymond knows more, wants to speak to that, but we're at least tracking that as a potential agenda item for whenever it's ready, whether that be September or October. We also, relatedly, are tracking, there was a previous request for a discussion about experimental interim treatments, pilot treatments, and we hope to address that. I think we're going to try to pair that with whenever we bring the comprehensive transportation plan to the commission. Those three, I think, will likely all probably come together. Then there's the annual crash report that we got some initial feedback from commissioners at the July meeting. There was a subgroup of the commission that had a small discussion a few weeks ago, and staff are working on a revised annual crash report. So that is, I think, expected to be ready for September. And we may also have an update related to the street millage, the sidewalk millage, and the street bridge and sidewalk. So that was being tracked for any updates on communications or information that's being shared with the public, that those would come to the commission.
Great. So are there any other requested agenda items for next week? And I'm just going to remind everyone that we're not going to get into a detailed discussion of these potential items. It's just a quick identification of them, and then we can get into more detail outside of the meeting. So Councilmember Griswold.
I can bring forward the white cane law recommendation.
Okay.
Any idea on the status of the train station? Because we haven't heard about that for quite a while.
Unfortunately,
I know they were waiting for something from FRA, the last I heard, but
that's where we are.
What?
Yeah. That's where we are. It's still stuck in FRA.
And is that also the case for the, I mean, not FRA specifically, but the micromobility ordinance revisions? That's stalled out somewhere, I presume.
Yeah, we did forward that on to legal. I can ping them. That's a good reminder. I haven't kind of poked them on that in a little while, so it might be worth doing that. So thanks for that reminder.
Great. Any other agenda items?
I did include from earlier, it came up during the AATA presentation, a request for future updates about contactless payments. If there's anything that you want to expand on or add to that, but that's what I jotted down as an item to track just for future, not necessarily September, but a future agenda whenever it's ready.
Given that it's now actually going to happen, right? I think it probably makes sense to give it a couple months and get some data on how it's going and usage before we bring it back to this group. Commissioner Smith, does that sound good to you?
Please.
Okay. Any other items? And of course, you can always email them to me and Kayla later. This is not your last chance. Okay, great. So seeing none, I'm going to ask if there are any. So if there are no objections, we will adjourn our meeting. I'm going to pause, look for objections. And seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.